So if I said, hey, sis, let's shine some light. Let's go treasure hunt. You're laughing.
It's a little better.
Right? Little bit. Because you're like, okay. And the funny thing is about the brain is like, okay, she's crazy. But it has you thinking differently. Automatic, you like, okay, sis, maybe I'll go, and some of that, sometimes when people go digging for treasure, they find crappy stuff, right? They find stuff they don't want. Or are you ready to unpack some bags? You've been carrying a lot on your back. I use that a lot. You're heavy, sis. You got 20, 30, 40 years. And see, you side there because you could feel the heaviness. Are you ready to let go of one of those bags? Yes. Okay. I'm going to work through the bag with you. Let's unpack it together. And we're going to find some stuff that doesn't fit anymore. We're going to find some stuff that was smelly. You know that swimsuit that you left in the bag from the last time from the trip? We're going to get rid of that. That little 2-piece you keep trying to fit in. We know, girl. I know I had to get rid of. We're going to get rid of that. You cool with that, right? Because you see, even the laughter, and this is not toxic positivity. Yeah. This is shifting the nervous system into play. Yeah. If I feel good about moving, I will move. Okay? So if I say shine light, so that's something I would say. And once again, it's not correcting you. It's giving a different perspective. Because some people that works. Yeah. Yet, like we're going into the shadows, some people that works. For me, it doesn't. I had to say I'm ready to shine light in areas because God made all of me. And he had me go through this. So there's some light in this.
All right. Hey, everybody. It's your girl, DJ with Plan for Keeps podcast. And today I have a special guest. Nichole Lee is a trauma-informed identity and life transition coach, life strategist, and holistic practitioner whose mission is to guide individuals toward an authentic and fulfilling life by helping them uncover their true selves, healing inner wounds, and cultivate more meaning, purpose, and passion in their lives. After a successful 20-year career in business management consulting, Nichole made a life-changing decision to pursue her passion and purpose and become a full-time soulpreneur in 2021. Nichole specializes in working with executives, entrepreneurs, and athletes who are experiencing significant life transitions, feeling unfulfilled and uninspired, and or seeking clarity on their purpose and identity. Nichole's certifications and educations include a master's degree in instructional systems design, a bachelor's in psychology. She's a certified personal and executive coach, certified health coach, certified travel coach, certified hypnotherapist, certified mediation facilitator, certified multimodality energy healing practitioner, and a certified trauma sensitive Hearth math practitioner. I hope I said that right. Today, she is here to speak about women in losing their identity in relationships, how to find yourself after a difficult breakup, how to find the blessing and benefits in being single, how focusing on self-love can significantly impact how others will see and love you, heal the trauma, give to yourself what you desire out of others, set boundaries, and don't overlook red flags. How are you today, Nichole?
I am awesome. Wow, that was a lot, wasn't it? I am well. How are you, sweetheart?
I'm doing good. No, we had to let them know all
the things,
and all of the things. Yeah, so I am honored that you made time to stop by.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. So before we dive into all of these amazing topics, my first question to every coach, which we kind of answered in the form, is what led you on your journey to want to serve others? Because as a coach, a hypnotherapist, and all of the other specialties and modalities that I read, you are serving. So what led you on this journey?
Well, so I became a certified personal executive coach actually when I was part of consulting. So as I started leading practices and elevating into my leadership positions, that was a great way for me to serve from a consulting perspective, like part-time. So in 2015, I became certified as an executive and personal coach. Fast forward, my mother became ill in 2018. She was diagnosed with cancer and rapidly started declining. My mother passed 4 months after her diagnosis. Wow. During that time, I was blessed to be able to be there for her, take care of her. It was very eye-opening how much our healthcare system really does not look at us holistically, right? Mm-hmm. We have an environment that is really much more symptom-based, right, than actually root-based. Mm. And so with me taking care of my mom, I started looking at alternative health methods, right? So everything from diet, energy. I was in this kind of work a little bit, but not as deep. After taking care of my mother, seeing significant changes in other areas of her health. So she did pass from cancer, but her eyesight coming back stronger. Yeah, her memory coming in stronger. And that was me taking over like her diet. Like all these things started shifting. My mother had edema after a surgery tied to cancer, and they told her it was going to take months to release all the fluid from her body. Within 6 weeks, that fluid was out. I think even less than 6 weeks. So it was an eye-opener to me. That's where I started becoming curious, and that's actually how I ended up becoming a certified health coach right after my mother passed, because I started seeing, once again, holistically how all these different things, your lifestyle, your mindset, could significantly make a difference in your health. Once my mother passed, when I went back into consulting, I literally was not the same. And people say that, when you lose a loved one, you're not the same. I physically and spiritually was not the same. Now, mind you, I've been doing consulting. I'm talking about the grind consulting, okay? I'm a million miler on Delta. I've traveled the world. I was a true full-fledged consultant working the 12, 14, 16-hour days. I could not function. There were times that I couldn't even think clearly. Now, this is someone who's been successful doing this, working for big firms. And so something was happening in me, and I really started to reflect, and I said, who am I? Is this really what I should be doing? And I really started thinking about, if I was dying, would I actually be pleased? And the answers were no. So fast forward a bit. We're in the middle of the pandemic. We've got Black Lives Matter, a lot of stuff going on, right? Emotionally, chaos in all spaces. And I remember being in a meditation, and with divine guidance, I was told to leave my job. To leave my career, I would be fine, and I was supposed to serve others. My friend was there because she came from Chicago, and I was like, hey, let's quarantine together. I live kind of out, so it's nice and peaceful. And I remember walking and talking with her and saying, hey, girl, good morning. She's like, hey. I was like, yeah, so I'm going to quit my job.
Oh, my God.
She was like, okay, girl, And I mean, this is my best friend. I mean, we've known each other for a really long time, right? And it just, that shock factor, right? And then about a week later, I actually called my boss and I said, you know what? It's time for me to go. I don't know what I'm going to do, but this is not it. So I contracted for about 6 months, and then I actually took the leap of faith in 2021. And then that's when I got other certifications. I became an energy healer. I'm certified in a lot of different energy modalities. My obsession with the mind, that's why I became certified as a hypnotherapist and a meditation facilitator. But that's really how it all came together. So I had to give you a little bit of context, because if I didn't, it just kind of be like, oh yeah, I just went 2. But yeah, it was really in depth. And then I have spiritual gifts that started to amplify. So I'm also an intuitive, which means I get divine answers for my clients. Sometimes it's things that they're thinking or that has happened in their lives, and I'm able to bring them forward because they may not even be comfortable speaking it, but they allow me to speak it on their behalf. So that's how I got to where I am now.
Got you. I want to piggyback a little bit just for somebody who's listening that may be dealing with grief.
Yeah.
When your mom passed, like you were doing all of these things and she still passed, did you deal with any of that after she passed?
Yeah, it was very interesting, and I've actually started studying grief more, and many times there's a lapse in time. So with, you can imagine, many people are trying to take care of all the day-to-day activities, right? My mother lived in Detroit. I'm originally from Detroit. So taking care, she had a house, clearing out the house, doing all those things, the funeral, the arrangements and stuff like that. So I was still in go mode. You know what I'm saying? I had my grief moments, but I was very much in go mode. And then I went back into work. I will say I really didn't feel the grief, and it was probably 6 months later, 6 months to a year. And like I say, I started studying, and that actually is very natural to actually hit the grief point. And that's what's unfortunate, because we live in a society that's like, oh, you know, after a couple weeks or a couple months, kind of get back to it. But it's actually the surfacing of those memories that come later. So I've worked through that. I had grief counselors, some of the work that I already know from my own healing modalities that I started leveraging, and I'm still working through it. It's less around my mother physically being gone and more from me experiencing her decline. So you can imagine being a caretaker, and there's a lot of people who've been caretakers. That's actually what's difficult. So there's times that I think about her suffering, like even now it brings back emotion for me. So that's the part that I'm still working through after, what is it, going on 5 years? It'll be 5 years next month that she's been gone.
Wow. What's a tip you'll give to somebody who may be trying to just push through, not even push through, because grief is grief, but just to get through that?
There's a few things. One is, your time, your way of grieving is yours. There is no timetable. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. And I think, once again, in our society of, you know, the time in which you shouldn't be having trigger moments or sadness, is people can be very uncomfortable, right, when those things surface. So that's the first thing I would say. Like, allow yourself, give yourself permission to go through your process the way that you feel you need to. The second thing is, I had to recognize that no one would truly understand my pain, no matter what, right? And I think when you're going through something, especially losing a parent, you're hoping people can understand, you know, and even other people who have lost parents, but no one will truly understand that pain. And so releasing that responsibility for other people to feel it your way allows you to be in a different space as well, because you will take more time of recognizing that is yours, and you can do your best you can, and other people can as well. The third, I would say, is making sure you do have some level of support. So if it is a friend who's lost a parent or a loved one, right, who has the capacity, because that's the other thing.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're wanting the person who doesn't have the capacity to be that person. That support person needs to have the capacity to support you.
Yeah.
And sharing how you need support. Okay? Because everybody, once again, has a different way of grieving. Everyone has a different way of how they want to show up for you. And if you aren't clear with that, people can't serve you the way that you need to.
That's true.
And I had to have some tough conversations, because I had people close to me. They wanted to be around and they wanted to do things. And we had to have some tough conversations. My thing was knowing you're physically available, but I may not need you, but knowing you're available, knowing that if I do need to reach out, you're there. And I think that's really important, you know. And it was difficult sometimes for people who love you, because they want to be in your face and they want to do things for you. But I had to really set that kind of boundary to say, this is what I need. I'm giving you the prescription for my grief.
Right.
Right? That my prescription. So that's just another thing. So that's like 3 or 4 things that I would recommend. Yeah.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to dive into these topics. So women in losing their identity in relationships. Women be losing their identity and don't even be in a relationship now in the dating phase. They turn on this, they want to be whatever the man wants them to be. When you wrote this topic down on the form, what thoughts came to your mind?
Well, it was being real about my own journey.
Okay.
You know, I've helped clients with this. However, in my own process, even my mother passing, there were opportunities to reflect on my life in general, right? And I started looking at why it has so many unhealthy relationships. I mean, I'm 46 years old, and I'm just
oh my God. I'm sorry.
I just had to say, just so people understand, like this, I'm an OG, you know, of working through these identity things. But yeah, I started reflecting. I'm like, man, where have I been morphing myself, right? And it's natural for us to want to accommodate people. It's natural for us to want to be attractive based on certain individuals. However, when you find yourself more focused on creating whatever it is that that person wants versus you, that's when there's a problem, right? So in my life, I could even notice if you liked me thinner, next thing I know, I was losing weight. You liked my hair longer, next thing you know, I was growing my hair out. You liked my hair straight, next thing you know, I wasn't wearing my hair with my wavy hair. That's how deep it was. I mean, it was almost like being an actress for, for every man, everything from habits, behaviors, things I liked. And so I do think, like you were saying, even from a dating perspective, it's become, I'm recently single now. So I was in a relationship for 5.5 years, and I'm so grateful. Shout out, you know who you are, like how you helped me get through my grief and hold me down. Like, I'll always be appreciative to him. We separated amicably. But now being back in the dating pool or the game or whatever this thing is that we're doing, you know, it is different even after the pandemic, right? There's this element of wanting to portray so much of what you think or you hear from social media or the media that's desirable. That's another problem, right? We know there are certain people that have given perspectives about how you should look, what you should say on a date, all these things. And so if you, once again, I'll just use prescription because we've all gotten a prescription from the doctor. If you are following somebody else's prescription for your mate, guess what? You're not going to find your mate. You're going to find the prescription based on what you're operating in. And then you wonder why you're constantly trying to live up to that standard because it wasn't your standard, right?
How do you help people realize that whatever they're trying to live up to isn't even their standard?
So many times what I will do is, especially if it's, so let's just look at it from a scenario if you are dating.
Okay.
And if you are dating, say, more than one person. So I will start asking like, okay, so when you're with this person, what are you doing? You know, how are you showing up? What are you wearing? Are you changing your hair, your whatever? And then and then you start to see, and a lot of times it's writing because I want you to see. So we'll actually create little figures of the people because visualization is important, right?
Right.
And then you start to look and I say, how much are you changing between these men?
Oh.
And one of my clients was like, oh, yeah, you've purchased different clothing. Right? You're laughing. She was even mentioning like she was laughing different. Oh, wow. Like, versus, you know, like, I mean, these little, it's kind of funny, but like, you don't realize these things you start doing, right? Because one liked a little more maybe subtle laugh, you know, one is real chill. And it's one thing if you're just adjusting because that's who you are. Like people can probably tell I'm very animated, so I just adjust naturally. But when you start seeing these things that appear to be kind of normal, and then when you get to see and you're like, man.
Yeah.
So then I say, okay, what is consistent in this for you? How are you showing up consistently regardless of the type of man? And that is usually the first aha moment of how much you really are consistent. And then I may go into, okay, how does this play out with the last, say, 2 people you were in serious relationships with?
Wow.
Yeah.
Got you.
And then you just start going, I'm very big in exploration discovery. So it's not a judgment thing, but it's allowing you to just start uncovering your own aha moments. It's not for me to identify. It's really for you. And that's typically, and I've done this with men as well, and they start seeing, because I think the other thing is there's an assumption that women are the only ones who are adjusting or morphing. And men are doing it as well.
We live in the same, I think it was, what's the saying? Parallel universes. Is that, am I saying the right thing? Where it's like we're basically going through the same thing, but it's like, never mind. I think it's parallel universe or something like that, where they say basically men and women are basically going through the same things. They just deal with it different due
Yeah.
to how society has groomed them and all of that.
And we're a lot more, I mean, what's interesting is I think we're a lot more similar in the challenges, the insecurities, the wanting to adapt, the wanting to fit in. I just feel that sometimes the platforms for women and the maybe even the comfort sometimes for women to talk about it is what happens, because like I say, I also work with male clients, and they may not want to be as more vocal about them having to adapt or people please and all these things, but they're going through the same struggles. I feel that sometimes they're silently suffering.
Yeah.
And women silently suffer as well, right? I just think that sometimes that, especially with those pieces, that sometimes that's not brought up as often.
Got you. Is there a happy medium, like in regards to women adjusting themselves versus totally changing themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I will go back with anything. I recommend you take the time to sit with who you are. So dating, work, different lifestyle things, many times we're not recognizing how much we're taking on other people's behaviors, traditional things that have been passed down. Even sometimes from a trauma perspective, if you've had traumatic experiences, shutting down parts of yourself because of that. And so I really recommend taking a moment and asking yourself, who am I? What are things that I really love? What makes me feel good? What does that look like in other people? Because then you can actually check in with yourself. I think part of the reason why we lose ourselves is because we haven't done a check-in. We don't have a baseline to assess with ourselves.
Have you ever worked with somebody who asked that question to themselves and they had no idea?
Yes. It's part of the reason why I'm an identity coach.
How do you help them peel back those layers? Because I think I could even say for myself for a long time, and I'm still discovering myself, but I could say I was one of those people who I could ask myself that question and I had no answer. More so due to me being a workaholic and due to, like, I felt like my personality was being a workaholic, or my personality was just helping people and being there. Like, that was me. That's it. Like, how do you help people peel back those layers to let them know that there's so much more than just who they are to people?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is acknowledging that those behaviors. So one thing I'll shift to is I'm very big on releasing yourself from the identity of I am about things that are particularly negative. So I would even say in the situation with you of you have workaholic behavior. You aren't a workaholic. The reason why I say that is at any point that we connect to the I am, it becomes an identity that we have to live out. Our brain actually says, I have to live that out. So if I keep saying I'm a workaholic, I'm a procrastinator, I'm a serial dater, I'm a whatever, your brain wants to continue to find evidence of that. Okay? So that keeps a cycle going. So that's why kind of looking at behaviors versus who you are at the core, right? So that's one thing. Okay. And how you get to that, what you were asking me is, and thank you for letting me just kind of shift that.
No, that was a good point to help somebody because like you just said, you do end up kind of, when you use the I am, you do kind of, that's your
it like shifts us. Like I am, I mean, any of the I am areas. So I was just sharing with you, like I would go back and I would acknowledge, even what you were saying, acknowledge that was serving you in some way.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when it comes to really getting clear on who you are, it is acknowledging that sometimes the challenge of you having that clarity is because you actually have not been given the opportunity. You haven't been encouraged to, the permission to sit with yourself and say, who am I? What are the attributes of me? And many times I go back to childhood with clients, because before all this other stuff was telling you who you had to be, there were some elements. If I say, when you were 4 or 5 years old, sitting back, what brought you joy? Usually somebody, the face like you just made,
Yeah.
like, oh, it was playing. Okay, so would you say you're playful? Yes. Okay, let's put that on the list. What else? Oh, I was bossy. Me. I've always like, so there's a little bit of leadership, right? Like, I'm a leader. Okay, beautiful. So we find the places that it feels good and to start connecting you to these memories where you feel good. And then I may say, are there people in your life that you really love, that you value and respect their perspectives of you? Yes. Okay, what do they say about you? They say I'm super smart or I'm helpful. So that starts to bring out this comfort of even spending the time looking at who you are.
Got you.
And that if someone is having a really significant challenge, I may ask for the opportunity once again to connect intuitively and just start asking, are you humorous? Are you fun? And then the answers start coming, yes, no, that kind of thing. So it can turn into like a playful situation. And then the other thing I want to add is many times I do this with the eyes closed. So what happens is we're used to being distracted, right? So if I ask you with your eyes open, naturally you're trying to find the right answer.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
With our eyes open, it's distracted. Oh my God, she's looking at me. I need to find the right answer. When you close your eyes, you actually separate this outside world, taking deep breaths, going in, and having you even ask the question to yourself intuitively. Typically, answers start coming. Why? Because we've shut down this outside world where you assume that you have to be right. The answer that comes out, someone's going to validate that of who you are.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for those tips. Now, I'm gonna jump around a little bit.
We jump wherever we need to go.
We're gonna jump around a little bit. So I wanted to speak on. Matter of fact, no, we're gonna go with the next one. How to find yourself after a difficult breakup. How does one find themselves after a difficult breakup?
So I would think again, it is acknowledging the difficulty. It's actually spending time on why it was difficult. Because once again, I know I'm probably repeating myself, but I will say what I've come to find, especially in this work, is we're so used to moving so fast.
Yeah.
On to the next. I just got to break out, on to the next, or I got to go to a job, or I have to take. So what happens is you actually don't give yourself the time and space to sit with whatever those feelings are.
How does one get comfortable enough to even, it's so uncomfortable to sit with yourself.
Yeah. And I would say even in that, right, is speaking that out.
Yeah.
It is saying it is so uncomfortable to sit with myself. And I would say this is why support is helpful. Many times it's difficult to sit with yourself by yourself, especially if you don't trust yourself, especially if you've had traumatic experiences that have told you that you can't solve problems yourself or you don't have the answer, right? Like that's part of the reason sometimes people have a difficulty sitting with themselves is because there's other things that have transpired that says, or even being still, being quiet, that's lazy, right? That there's other things to do.
Yeah.
So when we sit, we actually sit and recognize that that is part of the discomfort and actually saying it's okay to be uncomfortable and actually talk about the discomfort. I think that's actually where you start to get a bit of a release. Yeah. Because once again, it's not about you being right or wrong. It's about giving yourself the time to start to uncover why you don't want to sit with yourself. Right? And recognizing that it's not going to happen overnight. If you're really uncomfortable with sitting with yourself, a lot of times with my clients, I'll ask 1 to 10. 1 to 10, how difficult, like a pain threshold, right? 1, not painful, 10, very painful. 1 to 10, how comfortable or uncomfortable is it for you to sit with yourself for 30 seconds?
Gotcha.
Yeah, and if someone's like, it's a 10, like, I don't like, okay, so then we're going to start with just 1 second.
Ooh.
Right? Just, okay, 1 second. Can we go to 2? Can we go to 3? So part of it is seeing where you are on the scale of how much you actually can even sit still with yourself. And then when we get to a point, you're like, great, I can do this for 30 seconds or a minute. Okay. Can we ask the question of why that's uncomfortable during the process? And sometimes may come up, and I've done this, right, where you close your eyes and it's like, because someone told me I couldn't sit with myself. Someone told me that I needed to always have someone validate my answers or my thoughts or whatever. And that part of just allowing that stuff to uncover, many times emotions come up, right? Tears.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is, it's not just in the mind. See, those memories are in the body.
Yeah.
You know, and so part of the discomfort sometimes is the body doesn't want to sit still because it doesn't want to feel. And if you've been in situations where feeling is not safe, feeling has been told once again that that's not acceptable, then that's part of the reason why as well, because your memories are used to when you sat, there was something negative.
Yeah.
So you moving actually feels safer than sitting. So once again, it's not one answer, right? It really is understanding what's going on with the individual and finding where we can find that little bit of comfort to start the process.
Got you. Okay. I'm going to shift a little bit
Okay.
within the same topic. So dealing with a difficult breakup, how does one use a difficult breakup to enter into better relationships, you would say?
You're saying, so like how do you take that difficult breakup and take the time to, what I would say is kind of unpack or dissect it, that then you can create better relationships moving forward?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say, once again, it is actually, and I know we talk about the discomfort, but it is sitting with and starting to unpack without judgment. Okay. So this is the thing. Many times we don't want to unpack because we get into judgment. So part of it is creating that space to say, I'm not going to judge.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge myself. So I am going to look at what role I played and what role the other person played. Okay. Now, if you feel that you are in a situation that things happen to you, then many times I start with the other person. Okay. Because if whether someone broke up with you or there was something traumatic or it was just very intense, giving you that space to release that, right? If this person did this to me, this is how they spoke to me, this is what was so painful. I think that is necessary, because if you're not able to get that out, it's going to be very difficult for you to look at the part that you were accountable, if you were accountable in some way, shape, or form. And so starting with that, and once again, it just depends on how intense it is. I am very big on understanding individuals' intensity.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can only talk about it for a couple minutes, then that's where we're going to stop. Okay? If you can keep going, great. Many times I bring in breathing exercise as well, because the body is at what we call dysregulated. There's a lot of stress and things occurring. So actually breathing slowly, allowing yourself to have the space to express. Once you've gone through that over a significant amount of time, or whatever that window of time, and once again, kind of looking at yourself, then we actually start looking at patterns. So once again, I'm big on, like I was saying about the 3 people or whatever the case is, it's starting to look, now that you're in a comfortable space, you've released without judgment, you've been able to acknowledge the role that individual played, the role that you played. What are some patterns that you're seeing? Okay. What are you seeing between this situation and your previous situations or multiple previous situations? And usually you do see some pattern, whether it's the way you engage, how you're speaking, how you actually are able to deal with your own emotions or lack thereof, right? And so as we start to look at that, then we say, okay, what about this do you want to change? Because you have to be in a space that you actually want to change to create the new relationship, right? Yeah. So it's like, what about this do you want to change? How do you see this changing? Well, I see myself, okay, are there things that you need to support you in shifting out of behavior that you've seen is unhealthy for you? Gotcha. That then, depending on, once again, how deep the pattern is, how intense it is, that may take some time. In some cases, it's coming to an agreement that you're not going to date for a certain amount of time. Okay.
Gotcha.
And that sometimes is uncomfortable for people, particularly if, I mean, I was this way. I'm like, I looked at the patterns, but man, I want to get back out there. Right. And it was like, no, I need to sit with this because there are certain things that I need to heal on my own before I get in that engagement. Because if you don't, then you're going to repeat the pattern.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
And my question is probably going to sound all over the place because
Okay.
you talked about, you touched on the nervous system,
Yeah,
and how it was irregulated. Could you explain how the subconscious mind is connected to the nervous system, and how it could play out? Like, say, if you were somebody who maybe was in a traumatic situation, or maybe had kind of a traumatic upbringing, and how it could translate in relationships. And I know you just talked about the steps of kind of how you get your nervous system back.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Space,
yeah. So the thing, I'll just back up a bit to your point, right? Like, you have your mind, right? And you have what's called a subconscious mind and a conscious mind. And your subconscious, if you think about it, is like a submarine, is below, right? Yeah. And what some people may not know or may not be aware of is your subconscious is running the show like 90% of the time, right? And then that subconscious is a lot of the memories, the habitual behaviors, some value systems, belief systems, and things of that nature. Then you have kind of above the surface, if we say, is your conscious. That's us right now. I'm looking right at you, I know. But however, how we're talking, how we're engaging, a lot of that is based on my subconscious. How safe do I feel with you? How safe have I felt in this environment? That ends up determining how I'm communicating with you. Okay? So just want to separate that. So then when we talk about all those experiences, that is the mind. However, you have the memory in your body that is in your nervous system, that is in other parts of your body. Like, your heart is the strongest energetic organ in your body. Yeah. It actually communicates more to your body and mind than your mind to your body. Okay? So that's why I say we think it's a lot of mindset. The heart, the emotions, all those types of things is actually what regulates, or what we call dysregulate, out of order. The body. So that's what's interesting, right? And it makes me think of, and I'm going off a bit, so I thank you in advance for when I do this. But many people have heard of the quote Maya Angelou, right? Where she says, you might not remember what they said, you might not remember what they did, but you'll remember how you feel, right? Because the memory is in the body as well, okay? And so when you talk about, typically when something happens to you in the past, it's recalling the memory, the thought, but it's recalling how you felt. That piece is starting whether you feel regulated or dysregulated in your nervous system, okay? Your nervous system we have what we call 12 meridians. You have nervous system highways, per se, right? And that's energy flowing in and out. At any point you don't feel safe, you don't feel comfortable, it gets out of chaos. We're in Atlanta, so think of 285, okay? Everything's flowing, and then here comes a semi-truck, right? Yeah. Then everything goes out of chaos. That's what's happening with your brain and your body, okay? So your body gets out of chaos, it goes to the brain, says it's unsafe, and then it cuts off a certain part, what we call your executive functioning. That's your logic, okay? When that is turned down or dimmed or turned off, then whatever the response for safety comes out. So we'll just use the example of a traumatic experience, or we'll use a relationship. I'll use one in my own example because I think that's okay. So I've had situations where I was mistreated in the past. Okay. And in those cases, I felt less than, I felt devalued, and just in so much pain. But the part of me is I would take a lot of it and then I would explode. Gotcha. Okay. So keep letting you disrespect or, not do what you're supposed to do, etc. And then I was like a volcano, and I would just go off saying things I wouldn't say in my regular state, speaking in certain ways, elevated voice, body just ready to fight. I literally saw you as the enemy.
Yeah.
Then I calm down. I come back to this little joyous, happy person, right? And be like, what the heck did I just do?
Yeah.
Okay. That's an example. Because I had memories of not being taken care of and hurt. And once I got to my threshold, that part of my brain of logic, this person's a good person, you can get through it, shut off. Okay. So then in other relationships, even if they were the most amazing person, if there was something that was similar to that previous experience, that part of me would get triggered. That's what triggering is, or activated.
Yeah.
And I would turn into that person. And I would speak to that person in a way that I wouldn't naturally speak to them. The elevated voice, all those things. And then when I would calm down, I would be back in this regulated state. Upset with myself, ashamed of myself, right?
Yeah.
And now trying to pick up the pieces, because now I've shown myself in a way that's so out of character that now this person can't see me as the loving person that I was. So I had to unpack and work through that and see the patterns, and then start to heal based on those previous relationships. And in some cases, I went back to past people that I dated, and I had conversations with them about the impact of their behavior on me, but also being accountable for the part that I played in not communicating it, potentially staying, whatever those things were, to start to heal from that I could start healing my nervous system, but also changing my behavioral patterns in the future.
Got you. Okay. And then let's flip the scenario a little bit. Women who don't even explode, right? And they're being mistreated. And people know of the situation, and consciously this person know this is a bad situation. But then they stay. Why would those people stay?
There's a lot of reasons why people stay.
Well, let's just speaking of the nervous system and the subconscious mind and how that works. Why do you think someone like that would stay? And then how would one in that particular situation regulate their nervous system? Yeah,
so I mean that's a pretty in-depth scenario. What I would say in general, right? Is recognizing, as I even shared in my own behavior, that there were patterns beforehand. Okay. Yeah. And some of those things you mentioned, childhood, I think we talked like, I'll just back up and bear with me, because I think this may be helpful for individuals who may be listening to this and like, man, why am I staying? Why do I keep doing this even though I know better? Right. From the time we're born until around 7 or 8 years old, we actually don't have critical thinking skills. We develop those. So basically from that window of time, you're absorbing everything. You're like a little sponge. Right. Okay. And you don't remember everything. So you could have actually had certain things happening to you that were conditioning and programming you to say that behavior was okay. Right. Or you observed caretakers, people close to you, people who you trusted, and you saw them exhibiting those behaviors. Yeah. So many times that is one of the things that comes up where individuals will say, I remember my mother, I remember my father, I remember a teacher, whatever, someone that they saw valuable in their lives demonstrating that behavior. Yeah. And or hearing it like, I need to stay, or you need to stay, right? Like all that stuff is programming at a time that you can't say, ooh, this is right or wrong. You're just basically taking it all in. And then when you get to a stage that you actually can think about right or wrong, that deep-rooted piece is actually contributing to your thought process. Okay. Yeah. So once we said that layer below, right? So all that's coming up and then having you make decisions. If you start getting reinforcement that is a good thing in some way or safe to you or normal to you, you will repeat the behavior. So this is why I say it's so important to remove judgment and to understand that something did happen to you.
Yeah.
And I think this is so important because so many things are like, just get over it. No, we need to get to the fact that something happened to you at some point in time in your life, whether you remember or not, that contributed to these unhealthy behaviors that don't serve you.
Yeah.
And if we allow you to be in a space to talk about that and be a victim in that moment because you were at a space that you could not control, that you did not have authority, and you did not have power.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we can talk about that, then you can get to a place that you can liberate and feel like you can be accountable and have the power. Yeah. And I just think particularly I have a soft spot for that because once again, the things I've seen of why people aren't healing is they've been judged. I'm not going to be a victim. Well, there was a point in time you were a victim.
Yeah.
Right? And just because it's not about living in the victim role, but something did happen to you that you, whether you felt you were violated, taken advantage of, that you didn't have control, and to give you that space to be able to say, yeah, that did happen to me.
Got you. Now, I know they say there shouldn't be a time limit on healing and things of that nature, but in order to grow, how long should one sit in that victim, I guess, stage, like, or where they get to the point where they understand something happened to them, they were powerless, all of that stuff. How long do you sit there until you start doing the work?
That there's no, in my opinion, right? Somebody else might say that, but I can't.
How do you do it in a healthy way then?
What do you mean?
How do you do it because some people not play. I feel like I'm being so insensitive right now. I'm so sorry. Okay, let's say if somebody is in that state, right? Mm-hmm. Because some people will use what happened to them, and they'll play victim kind of in a narcissistic way. And I hate to throw the word narcissistic because everybody's a narc now.
Let's just say in an unhealthy way, right?
Yeah, okay. I was trying to say in an unhealthy way, and it's in an unhealthy way. And maybe they're going to people that don't have the capacity, or maybe that might be the case. Maybe they're just going to people that don't have the capacity to hold space for them. I don't know, but what tips would you give if somebody is in that state and they're not ready to move to the next phase where they hold accountability and they can take their power?
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate what you're saying of, we all have to evolve and grow. Because the opposite of that is death, right? Whether that's physical death, death of spirit, death of the mind. What I will say, though, and it's not to try to not answer the question. It's just there is no one size fits all, right?
That's true.
And I think the thing that you mentioned, too, that is important is I like to better understand what the benefit is for you to sit there. Because there is a benefit, right? Like part of the reason, too, with unhealthy behaviors, there is still a part of us that feels it's beneficial.
Right.
Right? So I'm very curious, like, how is this still, even though how is it still benefiting you?
Is it only benefiting them because they want people to feel sorry?
Maybe. But that's still, so I would say, too, that's still not out of judgment because now we're acknowledging that there's a gap in your life. There's a void in your life. Okay. So what you just said, right, is saying, okay, I said it because I can still, if I call up my friend, they'll answer and we can talk about this. Or I have a circle of friends that we can keep going in circles and they'll whatever. Or if I don't keep this, what will I have to talk about?
Yeah.
Right?
See?
Okay?
Yeah. So
once we can acknowledge, though, that, okay, you're staying here because this is giving you value. You're staying here because this is telling you that you matter to somebody because you're getting attention sitting here.
Yeah.
So if we can get to that without judgment, then we can say, what are the things, let's talk about ways that we can make sure that you feel valued and valid and cared for outside of that thing.
Got you.
Right? Mm-hmm. Because that then says, what are the 2 steps? Wow. Could you talk with that friend about something else other than that? I could.
Yeah.
Okay. What are a few things that you could start talking about that start making the steps for it not to be around that bad relationship that happened 5 years ago that you're still sitting in?
Yeah.
Well, we could talk about, okay, could the people around you, could they help you be more accountable to not going there? Yes. Are there a few people in your life that you trust that they could hold you accountable? Yes. Okay, let's talk about how you could talk with them about how you're sitting in this, how it still helped you feel safe or feel valued, and what that could look like for them to help you feel valued somewhere else. And I'll just keep going back to this. When we remove judgment and we get to exploring and discovering why, then we actually can move the needle.
Yeah.
If we go in judgment like, you've been here for 5 years, it's time to go, we've missed the fact that, once again, like you say, your nervous system, your mind, something is actually saying, I'm gaining something from this.
Yeah.
I'm benefiting this. It's no different than somebody who really wants to get married, but they will not date. Right? And you're like, you keep talking about you want to be married, but you're not dating because, once again, a lot of times is I'm so afraid. Like the last time I went out there and then I have to put myself. So it's actually more beneficial for me to stay home or stay behind the apps and just chat with a bunch of men, but never meet them and ghost them. And right.
Yeah.
So when we can talk about it from that space, then we can be like, okay, what are the steps we can do? What can we do together? We start co-creating. We start looking at it being exciting and fun and this new way of life versus sadness and despair.
Yeah. I like that. Thank you for
You're
cleaning
welcome.
Thank you for cleaning my answer up too, child. 'Cause
and it's all out of love, right? Because
Yeah.
and I love that, like, what you're saying is real. And it is how so often too we get in the habit of that, right? You weren't saying it from a judgment space. Mm-mm. You were saying it from an observation of how you see people stuck. Yeah. And I think that's the powerful thing of like, wow, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing people hurting. How do we get them out of that in love, but also be practical that they actually have some steps to take?
Right.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay. I love this quote that you put.
What?
On social media.
Okay.
The process of unbecoming is just as essential as focusing on who we want to become. Mm-hmm. I think when I first read it, what came to my mind was being okay with the ugliness of being okay with where I'm at, which might have some ugly parts in it, while trying to become what I want. And really being okay with the journey. Tell me what motivated this.
That post? Yeah. Because it's similar to what you said around this feeling of ugliness and wanting to bypass, and I would say whether people call it ugliness, some people call it the shadows, some people call it that piece, and just wanting to go to, I want to be these things, right? I just want to be. Well, part of the unbecoming, though, is recognizing when you've taken on so much. Part of the challenge sometimes the movement, you don't have a space. You overwhelm. You actually are carrying a lot of stuff that you don't want to carry. So you trying to be something, where's it going to go? You've probably seen Hoarders, Noah the show Hoarders, right? Yeah. So you can imagine you've got all this stuff, all these boxes, all the papers, all these things. How are you going to become? You can't move.
Right.
You can't even see out the window, the door, whatever, right? And that becomes overwhelming. How can I see what's possible for me when I got all this stuff in front of me?
Right.
So one of the things I recommend, because I don't really like the word, I don't like words like ugly and dirty and like all the words that have been put in place for us to have guilt and shame about us being in this human experience. Okay? Because all of us have things that we don't like about ourselves, that we're not proud of. When we use language, though, that's dirty, I even don't like the word shadow for shadow or going into the dark spaces. Because dark feels scary. We were taught the boogeyman's in the dark.
Right.
Okay?
So how do you frame the words?
I say let's go into the light. Let's shine light on areas
You know what?
in your life.
I like that. I'm not even gonna lie.
You know what I'm saying? Because if I'm saying we're shining, there's dark. Like me saying shining light, you still know we might go in dark spaces. But once again, I'm gonna go back to the patterns and belief systems and the subconscious. Most of us grew up that the dark was scary.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
When we see scary movies, they're in the dark. They're in the woods. They're in the closet. The boogeyman's in the closet. So if I've grown up all my life that dark is bad, what makes you think I want to go there?
That's true. I mean, that's true.
Right? Like, I mean, naturally, right? Like it automatically, so we talk about the dark. Automatically, if I say, let's go into the dark, dirty spaces. Just right now, we're just role playing. Your body changed, did it not?
I mean, I took a deep breath. You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, even the word shadow work makes me take a deep breath now that you mentioned it.
Yeah, and it's nothing wrong with, for some people that works. I'm just saying, personally, for me, I found that even people that I magnetize and attract, it doesn't work. That's part of the reason why let's shine the light. Because you just said, like we were trying to share with the body, you took a deep breath. That deep breath was a sigh.
Yeah.
Because subconsciously, the idea of going into the dark felt daunting.
It is daunting.
Yes. So if I said, "Hey, sis, let's shine some light. Let's go treasure hunting." You're laughing.
It's a little better.
Right? A little bit. Because you're like, okay. And the funny thing is about the brain is like, okay, she's crazy. But it has you thinking differently. Automatically, you like, okay, sis, maybe I'll go, and some of that, sometimes when people go digging for treasure, they find crappy stuff, right? They find stuff they don't want. Or are you ready to unpack some bags? You've been carrying a lot on your back. I use that a lot. You're heavy, sis. You got 20, 30, 40 years. And see, you side there because you could feel the heaviness. Yeah. Are you ready to let go one of those bags? Yes. Okay. I'm going to work through the bag with you. Let's unpack it together. And we're going to find some stuff that doesn't fit anymore. We're going to find some stuff that was smelly. You know that swimsuit that you left in the bag from the last time from the trip? We're going to get rid of that. That little 2-piece you keep trying to fit in. We know, girl. I know I had to get rid of. We're going to get rid of that. You cool with that, right? Because you see even the laughter, and this is not toxic positivity. Yeah. This is shifting the nervous system into play. Yeah. If I feel good about moving, I will move. Okay? So if I say shine light, so that's something I would say. And once again, it's not correcting you. It's giving a different perspective. Because some people that works. Yeah. Yet, like we're going into the shadows, some people that works. For me, it doesn't. I had to say I'm ready to shine light in areas because God made all of me. And he had me go through this. So there's some light in this. That's going to allow me to shine light in somebody else's life. So let's go into the light. Let's shine the light in certain areas.
Got you. I like that perspective.
Yeah.
I really do.
So
you said you were single.
Yes.
So I'm going to dive into these questions.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
My questions aren't like that. Well, some of them.
Oh, it's fine. I'm an open book, so, Okay. And I'll tell you if it's something where I'm like, we're not doing that on...
Playing for keeps. I feel you. No, I'm not. I'm going to make sure not to. Okay. In romantic relationships, what would you say is the most misunderstood thing about you?
The most misunderstood in romantic relationships. I am a multifaceted person. And it takes a person who is willing, and I don't have multiple personality disorder. I'm just putting that out there because, people are like, I am a multifaceted person. So it can be challenging for some people to see so many different sides of me. A lot of times people want predictability, right? They want to get to a level of like kind of knowing how you're going to show up or what you're going to do or what you're going to say. And that is not always easy for people. And that can create a sense of misunderstanding that I thought you were this way. And now I'm seeing this other person as more of me introducing you to all the aspects of who I am.
That's dope. Let me ask you this. Because when we talked about the first topic, like as far as like kind of changing up when you start dating somebody, how would you say you show up now versus back then?
Man, I show up so differently because I love every piece of me. For many years, majority of my life did not. And that's probably why, I won't say probably, that is why I don't use words like dirty and dark, because, you know, I realized that I thought I was dirty. You know, I thought there was something wrong with certain parts of me. Wow. I was ashamed of, you know, it's even making me emotional now, like ashamed of certain parts of me. And as a result, that can bring about patterns of you attracting those types of people. Right?
Yeah, it does.
So they can see that you don't love. I don't care how beautiful you look on the outside, every piece, whatever, that energy still shows up. And you will get mirrors of what you are hiding and hurting from. So me thinking I'm dirty or ashamed or I have to deal with this kind of person, I attracted people who were emotionally unavailable, who could see past my facade of beauty or whatever I was doing and being back in those repeated behaviors, not valuing myself and then being in situations that I wasn't valued.
Got you. From your own childhood or from your own upbringing, where did that come from?
I would say it was two-part. And I would just acknowledge what we're talking. I'm sharing some of the past. Okay. Some of even my past relationship, those things I healed because I was with a person who saw all parts of me, who accepted all parts of me, who pushed me into accepting all parts of me. So I just want to make sure, and we're not talking about my ex from this past, okay? We're talking about how I want to share that was helpful in that space. Yeah. Now I'll get back to your other question. It was twofold for me, I believe. My mom was mistreated and had a lot of childhood trauma, physical and emotional, as a child, as a teen, even as an adult. Okay. And so when we talk about what you're exposed to, I made more of those correlations when my mother passed than I did when we were together, because my mother was my best friend. So I started seeing that I picked up those unhealthy behaviors of relationships with men from my mother.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now I have a beautiful father. I love my father. He's an amazing man, super provider, unconditional love, all those wonderful things. I will say, though, my father was very results driven, very results oriented. So part of that was always wanting to succeed and achieve. And I start looking at unhealthy relationships as projects, unavailable men as projects, right? Because I was like, ooh, if I can accomplish this, well, also, right? So I saw some of the attributes of my caretakers and how that was showing up for me and wanting to be like, wow, I can prove to these people, I can be the person for them to help them heal, and kind of sacrificing myself in the process. But yeah, so I started seeing those patterns and also not valuing myself in the process and allowing people to speak to me or treat me in ways that weren't at the level that I deserved.
Got you. Ooh, I really saw myself for a second, because that was
and that I'm grateful from those reflections, right? And like I said, I love my mother, and my mother's come to me in divine and be like, you need to talk about this, because had I not recognized, I would continue repeating the pattern, right? So now when I show up, when I date men, you don't have to tell people all your business, but I'm not hiding who I am. This is who I am. This is what I like. Hey, y'all, I like Care Bears. You think that's crazy for a 46-year-old woman? Then I'm not your person, right? I have a past, bodies, whatever you want to call it. If that doesn't work for you, then I'm not your person.
What is your opinion on the people who say, well, I don't tell nobody nothing because I don't want the person to know how they can manipulate me? Or what's your stance on that?
And that one's complicated, right? Because it goes back to all the things we talked about. If you've had enough evidence that when you've been vulnerable, you've been mistreated, it is very difficult to tell somebody to operate differently.
Yeah.
So this is where I still go back to acknowledgement.
Okay.
If I keep saying, you know what, this happened this time and this time and this time, then I have to acknowledge that the evidence that you have, if we were in a court case, hon, you're gonna win. Yeah. Right? Because so we have to figure out what's going on with you, that this is attracting this and you're not getting what you need to then get to a comfort level that you now want to divulge and be more vulnerable. Because once again, you got to build up to that.
Yeah.
I think this is a thing that's challenging to me that I observe is when people are like, just get out there. No, we have to recognize that there's something going on to get you up to a point that you do that. Because guess what? If you do it when you're not in alignment, it's actually going to traumatize you. Right? We don't want to re-traumatize. Right. We actually want you to be in a comfortable space to move forward. So that I receive it, and many times I understand where it's coming from. The thing I will say though is recognizing how much of that are you okay being reciprocated. What I mean by that, if you don't want to be vulnerable, you have to, I won't say have to because I'm cautious of that. I would invite you to recognize that people you meet that may not be as vulnerable, accepting that because you're not expressing. So many times you want someone to give you something that you're not willing to give. And that's the part I think you have to make a trade-off and receive it, right? That you may not, or you may be attracting the same. And so that may not be helping you.
Do you think that links to a person not trusting themselves?
It can.
Okay.
It and once again, these are, there's not a one size fits all, but it can. The part of it too, though, is if we go back to, if I ask why you don't trust yourself, there's usually evidence of that based on decisions you've made that haven't worked out. You not really, following whatever your intuitive thing or whatever the case is. So we have to acknowledge like, okay, that's real for you. Yeah. You don't trust yourself. Therefore, you don't trust being vulnerable with other people. Right? And so this is where I would say probably not dating for a while. Let's look at areas where you can start trusting yourself. Let's look at areas that need to heal, that have created this judgment and lack of comfort and discernment with yourself that then is creating these repeated behaviors that you're attracting people and connecting with people that aren't helping you heal and be in a healthy state.
I do have a question. Very helpful. Now, when making a decision on choosing a partner, one must consider blank, then blank.
When one is considering a partner,
one must consider blank, then blank.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of go off on a little thing here.
Go ahead.
Making a decision on choosing a partner, I would say, have you actually looked at the attributes of who you are and the attributes of what you want and how much they are in alignment or not before you start making any decisions?
No, I have not. Let's go into detail.
Because, when I look at choosing a partner, one must consider, I would say one must consider the list, the non-negotiables. I need to consider all of me and then consider the person. Gotcha. Our stuff is we're going to keep going back to how much have you looked at you in your decision making. And then I would ask, are you showing up the way of what you want to show up for you?
Got you. See, now we're going to go back to this question because I know you know yourself enough. If you think of one word of what you would consider for yourself versus maybe what society would consider. So when making a decision on choosing a partner, one must consider blank, then blank.
So if I think about now when I'm looking at it really is my alignment, like how I want to live, right? And so that might be unconventional for others. And that's why I say I had to go back to what works for me. For example, I have never lived with a partner. Okay. I'm not sure I will want to live with a partner.
Okay.
So I'm not saying so right, like, so in a decision, like, we start thinking about so there's certain things about my lifestyle, how I live, that I would be part of my decision making. Yeah, so, there's not like one thing. It's kind of like these key things that I know about myself that I would want to.
So would it be safe to say when making a decision on choosing a partner, one must consider alignment?
Yes, alignment, then attraction. Well, I don't know if that'll work. I take that back. No, scratch that, because I do have to be attracted to you first. So maybe it's attraction. I'm just going to keep it real, people. Attraction, then alignment.
So then, but it's the then.
Then.
So,
okay.
So THAN.
Then.
So alignment,
then.
maybe.
Yes.
I know for me, so when I look at this question, when making a decision on choosing a partner, one must consider, I think, is it integrity? I'm going to say character versus then charisma.
Oh, okay.
So
I see.
So that's
I mean, and I think that
alignment,
because I mean, that to me, that is the integrity, that is the behaviors. Like, so I know I was kind of bulking it, but like that's important for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was fun.
My last question for you: how do you show up in order for someone to feel safe enough to be vulnerable with you in a relationship? I feel you shared a whole bunch of examples.
Yeah, so even when it comes to now that I am dating, me showing up as vulnerable in myself, as spirited in myself, as uninhibited or blocked, I find naturally creates a comfort. So if I'm showing up and I'm bubbly and I'm loving and I'm acknowledging you and I'm sharing certain things about myself, and then once again, this is a comfort level. Some people are not comfortable divulging on the first date or whatever. But naturally, in me, I'm just comfortable in me. And what I find is then the people I've started to date, they automatically feel comfortable, and we start talking about something like, I have never told anybody this. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you finally got it off your chest. And part of it is because I don't have any other agenda but alignment. That's it. So I desire to attract people I'm aligned with, whether it's short term or long term. And if that is my only goal, then it's just a different dialogue. I'm not trying to prove to you that I'm the person for you. I'm not trying to go over the top and show you how intelligent I am. I am just showing up and being me. And if I do that enough, you're either going to be a person who's very uncomfortable and you're not going to be you, right? Or you're going to take a deep breath and be like, finally. And then you just start being yourself.
That's what I'll be thinking about when someone comes like on the show and they'll make the comment of what I made before. Oh, well, I don't believe in being vulnerable or telling myself or talking about things I like and blah, 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 because I don't want nobody to manipulate me. But then it's like, I feel like you build the best relationships by being vulnerable.
Yeah, and that still goes back to, I am big on acknowledging and seeing that person. Like, if you're saying that, there is something that happened that has put you in that place, and I have to love you for that first. Because if I don't, you're going to stay in that place. And that's more than likely why you've stayed in that place, because everybody keeps saying, you've got to be. And now you're in conflict with yourself because everybody in the world's telling you have to. And you're saying, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel good. And so when you're in conflict, that's when shutdown happens. But if I say, you know what, I get it.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what you've gone through that has you feeling that it's you against the world. And though you want to be loved, there's so much of you that has had pain that you can't do that yet. Right? Okay, cool. This is, once again, how do we build evidence? What's a piece of your vulnerability that either is already out there or you're comfortable with? Let's start there. So the next date you go on, you share it. And you see how it feels, and you see how a person responds, and then we talk about it. And more than likely, right, especially if it's something you've already had, when you're like, that wasn't too bad. Okay, what's another one we can do?
Yeah.
Right? And then you may find, based on that energy, that person may tell you something vulnerable because now you're open.
Yeah.
And they tell you, now you feel comfortable because they've given you information, right? Like, once again, it's just this energy exchange, but pushing people in a place that obviously there's been pain doesn't serve them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What projects do you have going on right now?
Oh, man. So right now, most of my work is one-on-one. So I work with clients, and just like some of the things we talked about, right? There's so many different unique elements and stuff. So I have that. I am actually working on my book, looking to publish that.
Awesome.
In the next couple months. It's Who Are You? So it's all about self-discovery and going on that self-discovery journey. It'll talk about some of the things that we've talked about, recognizing trauma, recognizing traits, behaviors, but also getting into your aspirations, your dreams, your strengths, your talents, your gifts, all those good things, and figuring out what the essentials are for your life so you can actually create the life you love. And then I'm actually looking to work on a membership. So for individuals who might want some type of group coaching or just some of the things we've talked about, right? Having this community and safe space.
Yeah.
I am looking to launch that soon. So more to come on that. And then I have a retreat in December. It's called the Receive Retreat, and it's in Costa Rica. It's for women, and it's all about receiving. So we talked a bit about, you know, the connections and all the challenges and stuff like that. What I've come to find, men and women, but particularly, you know, because I am a woman, I recognize that sometimes we expect that we have to give something in order to receive.
Yeah.
You know, and so my retreat is all about receiving. Nothing else to give but to show up and receive love, receive joy, receive clarity, receive growth. So that's the stuff that's going on right now.
Before we disperse, I
Yes.
gotta ask you,
Yes.
what tip would you give to somebody who is struggling with that, struggling with just receiving and knowing that they don't have to give out to receive?
Yeah, there's a few things. One is starting with something. I always go to simple. So most of us get some type of compliment at some point in time, whether it's your shoes or your hair or whatever. I would say sitting in that and receiving the compliment without a, oh, this thing, oh, what,
Or
we
giving
do,
one
or
back.
or giving one back. But I will start with the other one because we will do the whole, oh, this old thing, you know, we'll do that. Or I got my braids done 2 weeks ago, you know, like sit with that. So that's one. And then, yes, the other one you said, not feeling like you have to find something else. So if I'm like, hey, girl, I love your hair. And you're like, I love yours too. You know, like, and then if you do, that's great.
Right, yeah.
But I do think those are two simple ones of just kind of sitting in and like, just take in that. The other is finding ways that you are already receiving that you may not have taken into account. So if that's at work, you know, where someone bought you a coffee and you didn't pay attention, they bought you the coffee for no other reason that they just got you the coffee.
Yeah.
So little things that are already happening to you that people you're actually receiving, you may not be paying attention to it because then that's like, oh, I can receive more. Like, oh, okay, I'm kind of already doing this. Are some simple things. And then if you are into things like affirmations and declarations and things of that nature, I recommend bringing one into your practice and routine on a regular basis. So if it's something like, as I always give, I'm now open to always receive.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, it's the I am now open or I'm always open versus I am. Because if you don't believe it in that moment, it's not going to connect with you. It's actually going to create more stress. So I like things like I am open, I look forward to, I'm excited about.
I like that.
Because that says I am creating this space, I'm open, but I'm not declaring that it's right now.
Got you. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's little things like that because you get people who are like, affirmations aren't working for me because you're probably picking something you don't believe enough in and you're not feeling. So how do we shift it? And then the last thing is, you know, you got to have somebody, your homie, a support system, a friend. Who's that one person that will help you receive more, that'll remind you to receive more. If you're already talking with them and connecting, because the one thing is we always need people, right? I don't care who you are. I know we create this society of individualism and it's all me and I don't need anybody. You need somebody, okay? So if there's one person you're like, hey girl, hey guy, hey whatever, I want to get more into receiving. How can we help each other do that? How can you hold me accountable if you, and I've had to do this. I've had girlfriends where it's like, you got me something, I got to go get you something, and it's like, no, I got that for you. Just receive it. Yeah. Don't send me a gift a week later because I sent you something, right? So I think that's also helpful because once again, you notice with me, the more that something feels fun playing, right? Yeah. The more that it feels exciting, invigorating, it actually does change the body composition as well. And it's something to look forward to. Yeah. A lot of things, I think, and before we close, is recognizing a lot of society has you feeling like everything is difficult. Everything is work. Yeah. Dating is work. Friendship is work. Work is work. So what happens is you're not using that creative energy, the playful energy is why children, have all the energy and stuff like that. Yeah. So I am very big on how do we not discount that there's pain and there's things we have to work through, but how do we make something fun? How do we take it out of the practice that you've had before so that it doesn't make you feel like it's work? Because if it does, you're going to stop doing it.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. Thank you for all of
Thank you.
Tips. Now, where can the audience find you?
Oh, they can find me on Instagram. So I am NicholeLee. So I am Nichole Lee. Okay. And then my website is NicholeLee.love. It is .love. Yes. And then I'm also on LinkedIn under I am Nichole Lee as well.
Awesome. So I'm going to have all of those links in the show notes. I want to thank you for your time and coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And until next time.